the GOAT Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Neander. Thanks for joining us again here for Week 11 preview show. Week 11, man, we are getting right into the thick of it. Fantasy football players, we're just a few weeks away from the playoffs starting. Are you making the march towards the playoffs, or are you making the march towards the ugly place, waiting for the off season? That's how it goes sometimes. If you had a bad season, make sure you start watching the GOAT earlier next season. For myself, I know everybody likes to hear about, what I'm doing, because, hey, if I'm giving advice, you like to see that I'm doing pretty well here. So the GOAT's got 3 first-place teams right now. Looking good, heading right towards the playoffs in those 3 leagues. Dominating teams are trending up. Looking pretty solid. Got my handcuffs set up and ready to roll towards the preseason. I've got another team that's sitting in 3rd place right now. It is only a league where 4 teams make the playoffs, so certainly 3rd place is not safe at the moment. I've got to win a couple more games there to punch my ticket, as they say. I do have one team that is not going to make the playoffs, and that just happens. You play enough leagues, you're going to have one bad team. I went a little bit contrarian with my draft there, and picked up some guys I really didn't have any shares of in any other leagues, and it definitely kind of backfired. And sometimes that happens. You got to try some different strategies out. You want to, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, as they say. I mean, obviously, looking back, I should have just got, Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones in every league, right? But hindsight's 20/20, and everything else just as it is in fantasy football. So that's all right, though. That's all right. We're looking towards for week 11 here. Let's see, who we're going to play, who are we not going to play? Well, we know we're not going to play anybody on the Green Bay Packers, the Tennessee Titans, the New York Giants, and the Seattle Seahawks. Those are your 4 teams that are on a bye this week, and that's a lot of firepower. That's 2 must-start quarterbacks and 2 of the top streaming quarterbacks for the last number of weeks. You've got a handful of playable at least, and if not a couple of star running backs out this week, and another handful of good receiving options, right? So I mean, Devontae Adams, Tyler Lockett, Golden Tate, all these guys are gone. Aaron Jones, Chris Carson, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry has been a beast all year. So hey, there's a lot of you guys out there that have to got to fill your lineups and need to know who to play. So that's what we're here for. We're here to help you out. We're going to start with the Thursday night game. That's tonight. So that's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cleveland Browns. The disappointing Browns at home here. This would be a huge win for the Browns if they can get to 4-6, knock Pittsburgh back down in the divisional rankings here. Cleveland's well on the outside looking in for a playoff spot, but they're still in it. They're still in the hunt. 3-6, you can catch fire, and 9-7 can happen, right? You can go 6-1. There's no reason to think you can't. You've got great talent. So, this game is one of the only ones where I think weather can play a little bit of a factor this week. It's not a freezing game. There's no, freezing rain or snow that we know of, but it is going to be a chilly game. It's a night game in Cleveland. The weather's going to be in the low 30s to start and kind of drop down from there. So, you might see a few more drops. Maybe might be a little trouble holding on to the ball. Maybe there's a little bit of fumbling problem going on in the game. But it's just the time of year where I start looking at the weather forecast a little bit more closely. I mean, it's just that kind of that next layer of research that you got to do to be ready to play your best team, right? We've already seen weather impact a few games this year with snow and rain, and now it's going to be the cold temperature and possibly snow coming here, these next few weeks. So start keeping an eye out on the weather. Definitely a kind of a pro tip there. You got to watch for your weather forecast. So it's going to be a chilly game here. We've got Steelers and Mason Rudolph. Who we played over here on the Pittsburgh Steelers playing against the Browns? Well, I mean, Mason Rudolph for me has definitely dropped, essentially off of my radar for streaming quarterback, so I'm not playing him. In the backfield, it looks like James Conner's good to go. He's off of the injury report, as far as I can see. So, they're saying he's active. They're saying he's good to go. In this matchup, I do like James Conner quite a bit. Of course, I'm concerned about the injury, but at this point, if Conner's on my team, I'm going to go ahead and start him. This does bump down Jalen Samuels for sure. Obviously, he's been getting the work out of the backfield as far as the receiving work. He's been getting a bigger percentage of that, and I do expect the dump off to be part of the game plan tonight in a cold game. But I just think you have to really understand that the ceiling for Jalen Samuels with James Conner in the game is going to be significantly lower than it was without him in the game, obviously. So I'm not expecting big things from either James Conner or Jalen Samuels, but you're going to have Conner in your lineup, and I think if you're playing a full PPR, that you can play Jalen Samuels, and I would like to see him or expect to see him get at least those 6 or 7 targets out of the backfield, and maybe some more. There's been some weeks where he's been getting more than that, so but I do think if he gets those 6 or 7 targets, his week will be viable for fantasy, and that he will, he can be an asset for your team. He's not going to win you this week. I'm saying you're playing Jalen Samuels if you have to. You're not loving it, but you can play him. Receiving options for Pittsburgh. At this point, I'm out. I wouldn't have a lot of confidence playing really any of these guys. I know Juju, the draft capital's there. You want him, to be great for your lineup. But, just like another guy on the other side of the ball here, at some point you got to say, do I have other people on my squad that I can expect to score more points? Regardless of name value, regardless of where you drafted them, you got to start looking at it that way. So, we'll see with Pittsburgh what we do with Juju Smith-Schuster. I think this is a game where, he could be fine. He could be a wide receiver, back in wide receiver 2, or a wide receiver 3, kind of a flex guy. But obviously you drafted him to be a wide receiver 1 with Big Ben in the lineup, and that hasn't happened. So for me, the more interesting play here is James Washington. He has come on as of late, been getting the ball into the end zone. For me, this is still kind of just a dart throw, a home run play. If you have a team with a high floor and a low ceiling, but you want that one play that maybe kind of could have a big game, I think you can put James Washington in there. But for me, I'm kind of staying away from it. I hope you don't have a lot of Steelers on your squad. So for me this week, really, as far as Steelers I'm playing, I know I'm playing James Conner if I have him, and if I need to, I'm playing Jalen Samuels and Juju Smith-Schuster, but I'm certainly looking to see what else I have in the way of points on my bench there. For Cleveland, so here's another one. So, Baker Mayfield is definitely off my radar for this game. I don't want to start him against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Has been just absolutely on fire lately since they got Minka Fitzpatrick from the Dolphins. This team has been just really, really creating a lot of plays on defense, just creating a lot of turnovers, a lot of dynamic plays, not just playing tough defense, but really making big plays on defense, and that's been a big part of what they've done during this winning streak. Pittsburgh's at 5-4, so that's been a big part of what they're doing. So Cleveland, I don't want to play Baker Mayfield now. In the backfield, it gets interesting. You're playing Nick Chubb now. The question is how concerned are you with Kareem Hunt? Kareem Hunt looked good last week. He got a nice boost to the offense, a nice little boost to the passing offense, catching the ball out of the backfield. We know how good he is. I mean, the question's never been about Kareem Hunt's talent. So we know this is definitely a win for the Cleveland Browns as far as having more talent on the field. They did play a number of 2 running back sets, as a defensive coordinator, thinking about having Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt on the field at the same time is definitely a big headache for that defensive coordinator and a big advantage, for your offense. So I do expect to see more 2 running back sets. I do expect, Kareem Hunt to kind of, chip into Nick Chubb's ceiling a little bit. I think the floor is still there for Nick Chubb because he's going to get the large majority of the carries in the game. But at this point, my expectation is that Nick Chubb is a little closer to a high-end running back 2, and that Kareem Hunt is a low-end running back 2. And I think that in my rankings this week, you're going to see that, you would see that reflected with Nick Chubb in the 13 to 14 range and Kareem Hunt in the number 20 range or so. I think Kareem Hunt's going to have another 5 or 6 receptions, and I do think, he has a very good chance of getting into the end zone in this game. So, I'm not going to go ahead and say it's going to happen, but I do think that this game, definitely think that Kareem Hunt might outscore Nick Chubb. They both could have good games, but I think that Kareem Hunt, this might be a game where his skill set is put more into use. As far as receiving options here, we have another, more tough questions with extremely talented receivers in offenses that just aren't getting it done for them. OBJ, what do you do? He's not, he's not terrible any week, right? He's still getting the 4 or 5, receptions most week. Those 50 yards. He's getting 8 to 12 points. Obviously not what you were hoping out of him, but at the same time, it's not absolutely killing you. But in this matchup, against this team, that's what I would be expecting. If I'm an OBJ owner and I'm playing him this week, of course I have those lofty dreams of 25 plus point games. But just expect OBJ to have another under 15 point game and not to get in the end zone again, because that's just what's been happening. So that would be my expectation. I'd definitely be playing Jarvis Landry in PPR. He is proving to be the beneficiary of the extra attention that OBJ brings onto the field and to his side of the field. So you're seeing a good amount of usage out of Jarvis Landry. I expect that to continue today. Another good to very good game. I don't expect him to have a great game against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, but I think that Jarvis Landry will be the highest scoring receiver for the Cleveland Browns in this game. And, he's my better play going forward until I see them able to get OBJ into a place where he can make some plays happen. I feel like they're doing that for Landry. The play calling for Landry is beneficial to him getting open and to making plays. And then with OBJ, it's like, hey, you're OBJ. You should be good enough to be open. Just be open. Everywhere you go, just run and be open and be ready to catch the ball. It's a little bit unfair, in my opinion, to OBJ to just, not really set him up for success in that same way. So there you go. So if I'm Cleveland, who am I playing? I'm playing Nick Chubb. I'm playing Kareem Hunt in PPR for sure. And then I'm definitely playing Jarvis Landry. The rest is on the cut line for me. I know OBJ, that means you. Looking at, wide receivers I might play over OBJ, realistically speaking, you have to start thinking about D.D. Westbrook coming back from injury with Nick Foles also coming back, right? Some of these Dolphins receivers, Devontae Parker. Guy's been getting in the end zone a whole lot. I know these are ugly, ugly decisions to make. And if you really have specific ones, feel free to let me know. Hit me up on Twitter at GOATFF Podcast. I'm glad to try to help you out. But these are going to be some tough decisions you're going to have to make. And that's what this week is all about. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, all right? So that's what you got. All right, let's move on to the Sunday games. First game, pretty interesting here. So we got the Dallas Cowboys visiting the Detroit Lions. So the Lions without Stafford, maybe yet again, we're not sure, would really change the landscape of this game. So I'd love to see Matt Stafford back in for fantasy purposes, not just selfishly, which that is part of it, but just in general, right? I want to see guys playing their best players. I want to get the best games that we can get, all those good things. So, I'd love to see Matt Stafford back out there this week. As of right now, as of Thursday, he's still questionable, has yet to practice this week, and if I had to guess, I would say he probably would not be out there this weekend. That is my current guess. But of course, stay tuned to see what happens. So let's start, though, with Dallas. You're playing Dak Prescott. He's been on fire against a pretty solid Detroit defense, but doesn't matter to me anymore. Dak, you're playing him week in and week out. Zeke, he has yet to be the Zeke that we've hoped, but he's playing really well. It's just really the touchdowns and the passing game work that hasn't been there. Yes, last week was a tough week on the ground, But, 3 weeks before that, he was over 100 yards. He's playing fine. It's just that the offense is throwing the ball well down the field. They're not dumping the ball off that much. And the touchdowns are coming from longer yardage. They're not really getting the goal line work, the inside the 10, the inside the 5 work that Elliott was getting last year. So that's where your points are, kind of lacking. Not like he hasn't been, good for you. He's the number 8 running back on the year so far in PPR. He's scoring 17.5 points a game. I mean, all those things you're happy with. You just haven't got any of those great Zeke games where he just dominates the other team and just looks like he's demoralizing the other team as he's running the ball. So you're playing Zeke. You know that. I think this is going to be a big Zeke week. I think it is going to be one of those weeks where he absolutely just dominates and demoralizes the other team, running the ball 20 25 times this week is my expectation. Moving into the pass catching options for the Cowboys, Amari Cooper, assuming he's, fully healthy, which it looks like he is, you want to play Amari Cooper. He's been going nuts almost every week. Yes, the expectation is that he will be drawing Darius Slay in coverage. But hey, I think a guy like Amari Cooper with a connection with Dak Prescott, I'm taking that to supersede the matchup and the talent that he's going to be playing against in Darius Slay. So I think Cooper's a very good play. Michael Gallup, one of the more interesting week-to-week predictions that you can make. I have a few shares of Michael Gallup, and it's been very difficult for me as a Gallup owner to feel confident in my expectations week to week. I keep feeling like I have much higher expectations that just aren't being met. I know he came out of the gates hot, and then had the injury and kind of cooled off after that. But I see a team where the offense is rolling, where the opportunities are there, and I see Michael Gallup getting high value targets. They're not always connecting. He's made some bad plays. Some of them have just missed. But I do think, again, I don't know if it's just owner bias or not, but I think Michael Gallup continues to be a strong play as a wide receiver 3 with high-end wide receiver 2 upside on any given week. And maybe I'm just kind of, maybe I'm just staying with that for too long. Maybe I need to let it go. I don't know. But for now, I still feel like Michael Gallup is someone that you want in your lineup, definitely in that flex spot. And, depending on your lineup, maybe that wide receiver 2, depending on your bye weeks and things like that. But, for me, I have him firmly ranked as a mid-tier wide receiver 3. Those are my expectations. Yeah, Jason Witten, here's the thing with Jason Witten. If you've been expecting any big weeks, then you weren't really, paying attention. The reason you play Jason Witten is because of the floor, right? It's the 4 or 5 point floor that you can basically count on every week, and then you can go forward, from there, and then your ceiling in any given week is really 12 points, right? 12, maybe 14 points on some weeks, but Jason Witten is the number 12 tight end on the year. He is a tight end 1. The guy's giving you, on average, 9 points a game in PPR. Basically exactly what you're asking for from him. And I think you can continue to play Jason Witten as a guy that you can expect to give you 5 points. And, unfortunately, a number of us are in that situation with our tight ends where you're like, all right, do I play, even in this game, right? Who would you play? TJ Hawkinson or Jason Witten? For me, it's about what I need out of my team. If I need points, I'm playing TJ Hawkinson. I know it's been disappointing, but that the opportunity to score a lot of points is there with TJ Hawkinson. Not so much, with Jason Witten. Just don't see the possibility for 10 catches, or 100 yards and a couple TDs, where I do see that, for TJ Hawkinson. So, as far as Cowboys, we're playing Prescott, we're playing Zeke, you're playing Cooper. I say play Michael Gallup, and depending on what your needs are, I think you can play Jason Witten. I think the Cowboys are a solid and safe play this week. As far as the Lions go, a little different story here. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about it as if Matt Stafford is out, because I do believe that's going to be the case. So seeing Jeff Driscoll last week with the offense, Driscoll wasn't that bad against, obviously a tough, Chicago team. I thought Driscoll played pretty decently. Now, I don't have him anywhere near my streaming recommendations for quarterbacks this week. I'm staying away from the running back situation here. It's been pretty ugly since Kerryon Johnson went down. Ty Johnson's in the concussion protocol. Sure, you can say that if Ty Johnson misses the game, that J.D. McKissic could be in for, quote unquote, running back 1 usage, right? So I get that. He's been, used out of the backfield, and if Ty Johnson's out, he's going to be splitting work with basically Paul Perkins. I just see that if Ty Johnson's out and Jeff Driscoll's in, I just think there's going to be tough sledding for the entire Detroit Lions offense, and I just don't want a part of it. So I'm not playing Jeff Driscoll, and personally, I'm not playing anybody in the Detroit Lions backfield. I definitely suppose you can play J.D. McKissic in a PPR league. It's a full PPR, and you can play McKissic and hopefully has a solid game. Maybe he gets up near that 15-point plateau with the receptions, but I'd still have him pegged as a 10-point or less guy for the week, and that's not really where I want to go with my team this week. Pass catchers, I think you got to play Kenny Golladay. He's just proven himself, even in bad games with backup quarterbacks. Whether Stafford's just not getting it done. That he finds a way to make at least one big play every week, and keeps himself in that that wide receiver one conversation week in and week out. He hasn't been having those monster games, but a lot of really good games. You're happy with Kenny Golladay. He is the number 11 receiver on the year in PPR formats. He's giving you 17 points per game. You're very, very happy with that overall. And I think you want Kenny Golladay in your lineup this week. Marvin Jones, much more of a crapshoot for me. This is the definition of a coin toss. It's all about who you want to play Marvin Jones over. I have him as a high-end wide receiver 3, so I have him in that kind of 28 to 30 range for wide receiver rankings right now. That's with Jeff Driscoll. He would get a bump up with Matthew Stafford. I'd have him as a low-end wide receiver 2 if Stafford did wind up playing. But as it stands right now, I'm going to keep him in that mid-tier wide receiver 3 flex range. And even with Jeff Driscoll, I think that it's all about your options. But I feel fine playing Marvin Jones. T.J. Hawkinson, didn't show up all game. I mean, Driscoll didn't even seem to notice that he was on the field. Amendola was getting all of that short over the middle work that you'd be hoping that Hawkinson would get some of. And then all of a sudden, like fourth quarter, that drive where they need to score, then you see Hawkinson show up. All of a sudden, it's like, why aren't you throwing to this guy all game? He's bigger and faster than everybody that's trying to guard him. I just don't understand why he's not getting the ball. So I want to tell you to play T.J. Hawkinson this week, and hopefully they will get their head out from where the sun don't shine and throw him the ball more. I know he's had some bad drops and some touchdown drops, but hey, you drafted him as a first-round pick. He's a tight end. You got to get him the ball, see what he can do. So I think that T.J. Hawkinson is a strong tight end 1 play this week. I don't think he's going to have some monster game, but I am willing to say that he's going to be a tight end 1 and that you want to have T.J. Hawkinson in your lineup for this week. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's keep it rolling here. We don't want to take too much time. So, Jacksonville Jaguars are visiting the Indianapolis Colts. So for Jacksonville, we expect to see Nick Foles back in this game. That's kind of the big story here. Gardner Mania is over. Minshew Mania has come to an end, at least for the Jaguars this season. Well, we don't know that, but for now, it seems to be that way. But that's kind of the big story here. So, we had very little to go on as far as seeing what Jacksonville did when Nick Foles was in the game, playing against a pretty strong team with a solid defense. Not great by any means, but a solid defense that does a good job at keeping the game close and keeping their team in the game. So, what would I do with Nick Foles? I got to see it for a week. If you're out there and either you've been sitting him on your bench or you've been streaming quarterbacks, I think there's other options this week. So I am suggesting that you stay away from Nick Foles for one more week. Just see how he looks, how the offense looks. Leonard Fournette, plug and play. Put him in, play Leonard Fournette. He's going to get the volume. He's going to get the work. As far as the receivers go, so I think this is by far the biggest story here in Jacksonville is how does the target share, go forward with Nick Foles. So we saw DJ Chark emerge as Gardner Minshew's favorite target by far. DJ Chark has had, great season up till now. Actually, coming in at wide receiver 12. He is a, wide receiver 1. He is the number 12 wide receiver on the year up to this point. But I don't expect wide receiver 1 numbers with Nick Foles right off the bat. And the reason why is D.D. Westbrook. So you have to remember, early on in the preseason, it was all about the ridiculous amount of D.D. Westbrook targets that Nick Foles was giving to him, and you seem to see that connection, and then all of a sudden Foles was hurt. DJ Chark emerges. I'm not ready to say that D.D. Westbrook is the number 1 with Nick Foles in there. I just think that D.D. Westbrook is the guy I'd be most paying attention to this week. I do think if he's been sitting on your lineup since he's fully healthy at this point, I think that you might want to get D.D. Westbrook in there. This is a sneaky week to play him because you could see that 10, 12 plus target kind of a game for D.D. Westbrook this week, kind of out of nowhere. And then if you don't play him this week, he'll be used. Next week he'll be gone. Either he'll be picked up or you'll play them, you'll be chasing the points. So I think this is a good week to play both DJ Chark and D.D. Westbrook, with both of them having kind of low-end wide receiver 2 expectations. And obviously you can hope for a little bit more. But so in this game, for Jacksonville, you're playing Fournette, put him in there. But yes, I'm going to play both D.D. Westbrook and DJ Chark in this game with Nick Foles returning. And I want to see what happens with both these guys. I think they're going to throw the ball, a decent little amount in this game. I think the targets will be there, not the touchdowns necessarily, but I think in PPR formats, both Westbrook and DJ Chark are options you want to have out there. All right, let's go over to Indianapolis. So it does look like Mr. Jacoby Brissett is going to be back in the game for this week, so that's great for the Indianapolis Colts. How is it going to affect their fantasy players? I'm not sure here. We still have T.Y. Hilton is doubtful. He will most likely be out for this game. So without T.Y. Hilton, that I think gives everybody a little bit of a dip down. So as far as streaming quarterbacks go this week, Jacoby Brissett is going to be a little bit further down the list than he had been in those previous weeks. I do think there are other guys that I'm willing to stream and play over Jacoby Brissett this week. Ryan Fitzpatrick might be on that list. I know against the Bills, everybody thinks I'm nuts, but at home, I think Fitzpatrick might have a decent game. So, I digress, but I just think there's other options you can look at other than Jacoby Brissett. So, you want to play Marlon Mack? Absolutely, you want to play Marlon Mack in this matchup. I do think that Mack is going to get a decent amount of work in this game. Past that, a little bit worrisome with the receiving options here. A lot of people went in on Zach Pascal last week. He didn't really do anything. Chester Rogers didn't do much. Seems to be, kind of a tight end driven, pass catching group when T.Y. Hilton isn't out there. Jack Doyle is still questionable. So, I definitely want to have Eric Ebron in my lineup as a tight end. I think he's a tight end 1 also this week. A guy that's been outside that tight end 1 most weeks. I think he gets back into the end zone this week. I think it's very likely he's in the end zone and maybe has, 5, 6 or more targets this week. If Jack Doyle winds up being out or inactive, then that absolutely solidifies my pick for Eric Ebron. But even if Jack Doyle is out there, I think Ebron's going to be a pretty good pick this week with Brissett back in the game. So, in Indianapolis, I think you're playing Marlon Mack, and I think you're playing Eric Ebron. And for me, that's where my confidence ends. I'm not okay playing the wide receivers for Indianapolis this week. I still want to see how Brissett looks. Want to see how they play against a pretty tough team in Jacksonville. I know they don't have Jalen Ramsey anymore, but still a tough defense and a proud defense. So there you go. That's that game. Let's keep it rolling here. All right, we're going to go to Miami. We just talked about it a little bit. The Buffalo Bills, the 6-3 Bills, baby. Going to Miami to play the Dolphins, and a lot of people are saying play your Bills. I totally get it. It's been a winning formula all season. Play whoever's playing against the Dolphins. I more than get it. So, in Buffalo, yes, Josh Allen, absolutely. It's hard to call him a streaming option at this point. I do think that he's probably owned in enough leagues where you may not really necessarily be able to call him a streaming option, but I do think you want to have Josh Allen in your lineup this week. He seems to be running the ball just a little bit more, not as much as I want him to, but he's running the ball a little bit more, and it seems to be helping him out of some jams. Keep some drives going, getting some of those first downs. You saw him run the ball in a couple of times last week, and I just like that. I like it trending up for Josh Allen. It's a good game for him. Even though you're on the road, it's going to be beautiful weather. It's going to be a great game. I think Josh Allen is going to have a really strong game. Look for, a strong Josh Allen game, right? Maybe 250 yards passing, 2 combined touchdowns, rushing and passing, and hopefully 30 or 40 or more yards on the ground. That's what I'm calling a really good and solid Josh Allen game, and I expect that this week. Devin Singletary, what do you do here? Well, let's start with saying that, I'm not playing Frank Gore. I think he can be dropped in most leagues unless you really just need that running back depth. Of course, if Singletary gets hurt again, Gore has a lot more value. But for right now, I think Frank Gore's value is essentially shot for fantasy, so I'm going to start there. Devin Singletary had the big game 2 weeks ago Then a lot of people played him this last week and got, kind of burned. He didn't reach 10 points. He had a rough game. Listen, those things happen. He's a young guy. He's still averaging an absurdly high yards per carry and yards per catch average. And a guy that's making stuff happen the way Singletary is a great play in this game. I know a lot of people are going big for Singletary this week. Count me as one of them. I think Singletary has a big week. If he's on your bench, you got to really think about who you're going to play him over. Because I do think this is a big spot for Devin Singletary. And don't be surprised if we see a 20-plus point performance out of Devin Singletary. All right. So you're playing Josh Allen. You're playing Devin Singletary. You're playing John Brown. John Brown, quietly, one of the best receivers in the game this year. And the funny part is, it hasn't been all about the deep ball, which, John Brown, that's kind of his thing. It's about the deep ball, but it really hasn't been that way so far. He's the number 18 wide receiver on the year. So right in the middle of that wide receiver 2 tier, getting you 14.2 points per game. And that really is basically exactly what John Brown has been doing. Those, 4, 5, maybe 6 catches, 60, 70, 80 yards. The touchdowns, again, really haven't been there. But, hey, the work is there, right? 47 receptions, 680 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I think you keep playing John Brown with that same confidence that you have been. Cole Beasley, he's had some decent games, but he's got to be, right on the outside of that wide receiver 3, flex territory for me. I think that, a lot of it's about the yards and the lack of even a possibility of a touchdown in a lot of weeks for Cole Beasley. He doesn't seem to be, active very much when they get close to the goal line. I know he had a close touchdown a couple weeks ago, but, just overall. So Cole Beasley, I think, is one of those guys, if you're really thin, you can think about playing him, but you just know that I think your ceiling is limited here, and you're probably looking at, in PPR, you're probably looking at a 11, point game or under, in all likelihood, from Cole Beasley. So stay away from him. Stay away from me. Stay away from Dawson Knox for now. Any of the tight end options for Buffalo, I'm not looking at. So playing Allen, playing Singletary, playing John Brown, and moving on to the Dolphins. So what's going on here in Miami? I know, I mentioned it before. A lot of people think I'm nuts. I do think that Ryan Fitzpatrick is probably going to have a pretty good game, and I do have him as one of my better streaming quarterbacks this week. So I know it goes against, what Buffalo's been doing this year on defense and to opposing quarterbacks. I'm not saying I'm expecting a huge game out of Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I just kind of feel it. I really do. Just one of those instinct things where it defies logic, it defies statistics. I just think that Fitzpatrick's going to have a decent game this week. So take that for what it's worth. I think if you're looking to stream a quarterback, somebody that's absolutely out there is Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I think he could play him. Part of that is I think they're going to throw the ball. Man, they haven't got anything going on the ground. It's been really bad. Now without Mark Walton, it's been Kalen Ballage, and his efficiency has been, quite atrocious. I'm not sure if they might bring somebody else in, but for now, it looks like, hey, they're going to run with what they have. And, Kalen Ballage is not somebody I want to play, but I think he actually helps everybody else with how bad he is, and he keeps them throwing the ball a little bit more. So, in my opinion, I understand there's very few guys out there that get running back 1 usage that aren't being started. There's just not a lot of those guys. I think that Kalen Ballage right now has to be on that list. I don't care if he's getting 20 carries a game right now. If he's turning it into 50 yards and that's all that's happening, then it's just not working. So I'm leaving Ballage alone. For the most part, leaving all of the receiving options as far as wide receivers alone on the Dolphins. I do think that Devontae Parker, as he has been for many weeks running, is a very solid play as a wide receiver 3 in a flex. If you're looking at it every week, it's like 5 or 6 catches, 50 or 60 yards or maybe a little bit more, and a lot of weeks you're getting that touchdown. So what am I missing? Where the floor is 10 points, 4 for 60, 5 for 50, and then the ceiling, is 20, to maybe 24 points. He hasn't been having those huge games, but that touchdown goes in, then he's scoring close to 20 points. If no touchdown, he's getting you 10 to 12 points. So I don't know what I'm missing. I've got him rostered in a couple of leagues where, yes, he hasn't made the field more than 1 or 2 weeks based on bye weeks, but that's a guy you got to feel great about having on your bench, that if there's injuries, when these bye weeks are happening, you can throw this guy in there, and I think you can throw him in there again this week. I say you play Devontae Parker. It's the only wide receivers I want to play on Miami. Let's talk about Mike Gesicki as the tight end. I know he disappointed last week. He had that big week with almost 100 yards, and then he kind of disappointed. That's what you get with tight ends, man. I mean, if you don't draft, one of the top few, right, which, the guys that we knew were going to be on the top, and then you have, Darren Waller and Mark Andrews, and up until last week, Austin Hooper, this is what you get. You get some up weeks, you get some down weeks. You're trying to find the right ones. This one, for me, is not a good matchup. Buffalo is one of the best teams against the tight end, and I just expect them to be, kind of on lockdown here again on Mike Gesicki. So I think, for me, I know it's crazy, but I think you can play Fitzpatrick, and I think you can definitely play Devontae Parker. Those are the only Dolphins I'm looking at, and I am moving on. All right, let's go to Minnesota. The Denver Broncos going to be visiting the Minnesota Vikings. Kind of an interesting game here. I think we're going to be kind of an ugly game for fantasy. I got to tell you, I'm not looking to see a ton of guys doing a lot. It's a pretty low over-under. The over-under is only 40 right now, so just not a lot of expected points here. We still don't know if Adam Thielen's back. There's a lot of unknowns in this game. So let's start with Denver. The young quarterback had a decent game. I know that he played better than maybe was expected, and that's fine. But for me, on the road against Minnesota, I'm not even thinking about playing this kid in this game. It's just what it is, so I don't want to do that. All right? What do you do with the running back situation? Phillip Lindsay, I think, needs to be in your lineup. He's showing more of that game-breaking, playmaking ability that he was earlier. I think they're going to want to run the ball a good amount and maybe keep Dalvin Cook off the field as much as they can. So I think Phillip Lindsay's a very strong play here. I do think, however, that Royce Freeman and his value seems to be dropping a little bit here. So I probably keep Royce Freeman on my bench for this week. He could always find his way into the end zone, but for me, I'm holding off on that. All right, so I'm playing Phillip Lindsay. You're playing Cortland Sutton. He's still the number one wide receiver. He's still going to be the guy getting the majority of targets, the majority of high-value targets. And while his ceiling is significantly lower without Joe Flacco, now that Emmanuel Sanders isn't there, he's the number one game in town. And I think that he can still be in your lineup as a wide receiver 3 flex kind of a play. So that's the only wide receivers I'm looking at on Denver. And then the question is Noah Fant, right? The playmaking rookie tight end who has shown great speed and great just downfield playmaking ability. What do you do with Noah Fant? Well, what you do is you understand that it's a boom or bust kind of a play, and you play him knowing that. If I am thinking about, if I've got these guys like Jason Witten, TJ Hawkinson, a few of these guys, Kyle Rudolph, where I don't know what they're going to do, I'm probably playing Noah Fant over these guys for what could happen. I love to see what could happen in a game and for a team. And when I see a guy like Noah Fant making plays the way he made, a couple weeks ago, I know that can happen any week. We saw it with Kittle, where he just started making those long plays after long plays, breaking tackles, running past people, running through people, running over people. I think we might start to see a little of that from Noah Fant. So, unfortunately, I don't have him on, really any of my teams, and I think we're past that point. I don't think you can get him in most leagues. I think a lot of people have him stashed, but if he's out there or if you have him on your bench, I'd definitely be thinking about playing Noah Fant this week. All right, let's talk about the Vikings. Kirk Cousins very quietly becoming, one of the better quarterbacks, and this is one of those situations where early storylines dominate for way longer than they should. Yes, Kirk Cousins had a very bad start to the season, didn't look great. Luckily, their defense was on point. Dalvin Cook looked amazing, so, they didn't need it that bad, right? So now Kirk Cousins, since week 3, has looked fantastic, and, Kirk Cousins owners, which aren't that many, are happy with him. So he's one of my top streamers for this week. I know it's a tough matchup against the secondary of Denver with Chris Harris, but I still think it's a good matchup. I still think Kirk Cousins is a good play here, and he's on my list of favorite streaming quarterbacks for this week. Dalvin Cook, come on. You know you're playing Dalvin Cook. Expect more Dalvin Cook-like things to happen this week. Bigger questions. Who else do we play for the Vikings? I know. Stephon Diggs, man, is like the lottery ticket of the week every week. And for me, it's about your projection on this week, right? Are you projected up big? If you're projected up big, I think you can play Stephon Diggs because it won't hurt you as bad if he has one of those one catch for 15-yard games that he's known to have. You can still win your game if you have your other guys that are expected to score big if they do. Now, if I'm in a very tightly projected game, I'm looking somewhere else. I'm looking for high floor with decent ceiling. And Stephon Diggs does not give you a high floor. He gives you the floor, the bottom of the floor, which is nothing. That is unbelievably a possibility any given week with Stephon Diggs. I don't get it. So what do we think is going to happen this week? I honestly think it'll be somewhere in the middle. I think Chris Harris makes this a very tough matchup, and I would be staying away from Stephon Diggs this week. I'd keep him on my bench. And listen, I get it. You can crucify me next week if he has 9 for 150 and 2 touchdowns. We all know that can happen. I just don't think it'll happen this week. I think Chris Harris will keep him in check. Now, so who is going to catch the ball? Because someone's going to catch the ball for Minnesota. You know, little Laquan Treadwell, I don't want to play him. I am very interested in the tight ends this week, specifically because of the lockdown coverage by Chris Harris. I think is going to open up some more passes for Dalvin Cook, which is smart for the Vikings because we see what Dalvin Cook can do with receptions out of the backfield. But I also think it opens up a few more tight end opportunities. So, you know, Kyle Rudolph, that's a little bit more maybe red zone. But for me, the one to watch here is Irv Smith. I brought it up the last couple of weeks, and you're starting to see more viability for both tight ends from Minnesota. Irv Smith, the rookie, Kyle Rudolph, the veteran. You know, they trust Rudolph more around the red zone. You saw that last week. He had 2 touchdowns, not much yardage for the game, but got in the end zone both times. But Irv Smith was the one making the bigger plays, getting the yardage, getting those first downs. And I think that Irv Smith is going to have a pretty good week this week. I'm not expecting him to be on the top end of tight ends by any means, but I do expect him to be flirting with tight end 1 numbers this week. So I think you can play Irv Smith. I mean, believe me, I know the risk is there. And I know it might be a really bad game, but I just have a feeling again that I do think you can play Irv Smith, and I think you can have decent expectations for him in a game where I do think that the dump off and the short pass is going to be featured, you know, pretty heavily in this game. So that's the way I'm looking at it. That's what I've got. All right. Keep it rolling here. Let's get these last couple of games done for the first half of the preview show. All right. New Orleans Saints at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Hard to predict what's going to happen in this game, right? Yeah, the Saints put up a real just egg against Atlanta last week. Who saw that happening? I mean, I think a lot of people saw New Orleans scoring 40, plus points more likely than scoring, 10 points or less. Pretty crazy. Especially against the Atlanta Falcons, which, kind of nuts. Atlanta's been giving up, points left and right. Tampa Bay was able to get that win against Arizona, so pretty close game for them. Both these teams are, kind of in different places right now. You had New Orleans with a long win streak, just got, beaten last week. You had Tampa Bay finally winning after a long losing streak, getting back in the win column. What do we see with the trends this week? No, I think that New Orleans gets back on track against Tampa Bay. I think that this is going to be a big old game for fantasy football. Over under 49.5 points. What do we got going on here? Drew Brees, baby, play him. I know we didn't have a great week last week. Don't worry about that. Play Drew Brees. Play Alvin Kamara. I think this is going to be a big game for Alvin Kamara, kind of a get-right game. Let's get him moving in the right direction, moving towards the playoffs and towards that second half of the season push. I see Kamara being a big part of the game plan this week. And because of that, I think Latavius Murray, I think his playability at this point has kind of reached its end for me. He's still, an okay guy to play. He's going to get his touches, and, he still might get into the end zone. He still might score 10, 12 points, but I think that New Orleans, now they have Breeze back. Now Kamara's healthy. They're post-bye week. I think they're really going to try to get their offense locked in, get their main guys locked in, and get this offense looking the way they want it to look, making that push towards the playoffs. So, Kamara's a big play for me. I think you want to keep Murray on your bench. Michael Thomas, we all know you're playing Michael Thomas. Other than that, I think you're playing Jared Cook, and that's it. None of the other receivers for New Orleans have proven that they need to be in your lineup. It's just, you never know what's going to happen with any of those guys. They can make a big play. But the reality is, this offense runs through Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, and that's the end of the story. That's it. Jared Cook had a nice week last week, so I think you can play Jared Cook again this week. Drew Brees seemed to look his way a good amount over the middle, and with a guy as savvy and as accurate as Drew Brees, I do want a part of that. So I was off Cook, most of the year, but now I'm on Cook, right? So hey, get on Cook. Go ahead and do it. All right, Tampa Bay, what do we got going on here? So Tampa, I'm very hesitant to play Jameis Winston in this matchup, and it's only because of the turnovers. I don't doubt that he might have, close to 300 yards and 2 or maybe even 3 touchdowns on the game. The issue is, will there be 2 or 3 interceptions and maybe a fumble? And it definitely could happen against this defense. I'm a little bit concerned about that. So while I do really like the Tampa Bay weapons, I know it seems contradictory, but I don't really love Jameis Winston this week, and a lot of that's just because of the turnovers. So I think the yardage will be there and the touchdowns, and that'll help the other fantasy assets, but I don't think that you're going to be able to trust Jameis Winston in that way this week. And again, it's about the turnovers, taking care of the ball, 14 interceptions. I think it's something like 10 fumbles. It's just too much for me to really feel trustworthy. So I'm going to lean you to stay away from Jameis Winston this week. It's all about what your options are, but that would be my play. Running back, all right, so I talked about it. It feels like every week when you talk about Tampa Bay's running back situation, you feel like you have a little bit of a grip on it. It seemed like, okay, hey, Ronald Jones is now the guy. It's like, all right, we've now moved towards that direction for a few weeks. Coach speak is all about, what Ronald Jones is doing well, and that he's earned, running back 1 usage, and then boom, we're right back to that same split. So in this week, even though I think Ronald Jones will be the number 1 back, I think it'll be clear this week, I would probably stay away from him. I think this game is going to happen all through the air as far as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are concerned. So that means, yes, you should already know this, but yes, play Mike Evans, play Chris Godwin, and I can't believe I'm going to say it, but play O.J. Howard. Excuse me. No, I know. It's terrible, though. I mean, listen, I was an O.J. Howard owner in a couple of leagues where I exhausted my frustration with him, for those first 6, 7, 8 weeks. Finally cut the cord, cut him in every league, sent him out to the free agent pool. And, now he's being picked up. He had, 4 for 47 and a touchdown last week, something like that. And, I know it was against Arizona, who's been really bad against tight ends, and everyone scores against them. So there is that part of the, of the storyline there. But I do think that O.J. Howard is going to be a playable tight end again this week. And I think that if you're expecting 7 to 10 points out of him, I think you can definitely get that with an option, an opportunity at a touchdown also. So I don't know that I'm going to be playing O.J. Howard a lot for the rest of the year, but I do think that in this game, I expect Winston to throw the ball 40 times, and I do think some of those are going to go O.J. Howard's way. So that's what I got right there. In Tampa, who am I playing? I'm playing the pass catchers. I'm playing Evans, Godwin, and O.J. Howard, and for me, that is about it. All right. Almost halfway through. What's the last game on the slate for us today to get halfway through? Oh, man. Oh, I wish it was a better one. So, New York Jets at the Washington Redskins, over under of 38 points. Vegas does not expect these offenses to get it going here. But let's see. Hey, you got to play people. Someone's going to get the ball, right? So who are we playing here? So if I'm looking at the Jets, there's no way I'm playing Sam Darnold even against the Redskins. I don't care if they're 1-8. Just this team is inept, and I'm not playing Sam Darnold. Lev Bell, you're definitely playing him. I know Lev Bell's been disappointing, but the truth of the matter is, while he hasn't been great, he hasn't been bad. I mean, Le'Veon Bell's the number 11 running back in PPR. He's getting 15 points a game. Most of that is volume based, but that's fine. You don't care how you get the points. It's about getting the points, right? So I think you got to play Lev Bell. Expect him to have another volume-filled game where he gets you the points that you need. Maybe this is a game where he breaks a couple of big plays. We just haven't seen it yet, but it can happen with Lev Bell, any given week. So you got to have him in your lineup. All right. What are they saying about him? Actually, I forgot about that. He's kind of hurt right now, isn't he? Man, limited practice today with ribs and a knee, and he's not feeling well. Man. All right, so you got to monitor this situation. So Lev Bell, I don't know why I thought that he got in a full practice yesterday. He definitely did not, and he's definitely on the fence for playing on Sunday. So let's see, what do we do? If Le'Veon Bell is out, do you play Bilal Powell or Ty Montgomery? For me, the answer is yes. You play Bilal Powell. I mean, again, think about the volume. Bilal Powell has shown himself to be serviceable in the past, and he can be serviceable again in the future, especially if he's touching the ball 20-plus times. So keep an eye out for this. Lev Bell, I'm definitely worried about. Looking at the multitude of injuries they have him listed for, ribs, knee, and illness, I'm going to go ahead and say that Lev Bell's probably not going to play this week. And with that being the case, I will recommend to play Bilal Powell. In his case, not with the same confidence I would have played Lev Bell if he was healthy. But yes, I'll say play Bilal Powell. Receiving options for the Jets. Robbie Anderson, at this point, I mean, I've been telling you for weeks he should not be in your starting lineup. He probably can go away from your roster because the fact is, Jamison Crowder's the number 1 wide receiver on this team, and Demaryius Thomas is the number 2. So, who would I play this week if I'm looking at playing Jets? I'd probably play Jamison Crowder. I probably would not play Demaryius Thomas. So, I'm going to go ahead and recommend that you play Jamison Crowder for another week, and that would be it. Unfortunately, Chris Herndon, his season's over. He's on IR. So that leaves Ryan Griffin, who has had a decent rapport with Sam Darnold. And I think that if you need to play a tight end, Ryan Griffin's as good of a kind of dart throw as a lot of these other guys are. I have him outside of my top 15 or 16 tight ends, so I'm not recommending him. But we've seen him score, with Sam Darnold. We've seen him get the targets that we were hoping that Herndon would get. And you definitely have a 5-6 catch game coming his way this game. I'm probably staying away from him. So there you go. Jets, who you playing? Bilal Powell. Maybe you're playing Jamison Crowder, and for me, that's it. Washington, another team where I'm not playing a lot of guys, if any. You're not playing Dwayne Haskins. You got to see him do something. I think his longest pass to any wide receiver so far is like 13 yards. That's not going to do it. So you're not playing Dwayne Haskins. What do you do with the running backs? AP has been, the ageless wonder. He's still been having some really good weeks and looks really solid. Problem here is that Darius Geis is going to be back in the game, it looks like. He was activated. He seems healthy. So I think we're expecting him to play. That's going to cut in to AP's work. That's just what it is. He's going to be out there, and it's going to cut into his work a little bit if he's on the field. So, I'm not playing either one of these guys. I don't want to play Darius Geis until I see how he looks after the injury, and I don't want to play Adrian Peterson until I know how much work Geis is going to get. So I'm staying away from both of these guys. If I had to play one, I'm playing Adrian Peterson just because, the old school coach, Bill Callahan, still might give him, 18-plus carries, even in a game where, in any game script, right? It's just what he wants to do. He wants to run the ball. He wants to play old school football. So, if I had to play one or if I was that desperate, I think you play Adrian Peterson, but I'm not looking forward to it. As far as receivers go, the only viable receiving option really for the Redskins is Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, and just like everyone else, I am very, very hesitant to recommend playing him while Dwayne Haskins is the quarterback. If Case Keenum was in there, I'd say yes, he's a must play. not only can you play him, if Case Keenum was a quarterback, I'd be putting Terry McLaurin in my need to play category basically every week. But without Case Keenum and without any kind of deep threat for the quarterback, I can't, really recommend that you play Terry McLaurin. He is the number one wide receiver there, and as Haskins gets more and more work, maybe he'll get some more throws his way. But for now, I just can't do it. I just can't play any receiver as long as Dwayne Haskins is the one throwing him the ball. So, easy game here. I don't want to recommend any Washington Redskins to be in your lineup. I don't know how much easier I can say it. Don't play any Redskins. Try not to play any Jets. If you have to, play Jamison Crowder. You can play Bilal Powell, assuming that Lev Bell is out. If Lev Bell is in, if he looks healthy, maybe go ahead and play him. But I'd be really, really concerned about that. All right. That's going to do it for today. That's going to do it for part 1 of our Week 11 preview show. So we do have the Thursday night game tonight. Steelers and Browns. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, you get what you need out of tonight's game. Hopefully you play the guys I said to, and it all works out well. Other than that, we're going to see you tomorrow for part 2 of the review. Part 2 of the preview show for Week 11. Got a lot of great games to go over tomorrow. I know you still have to fill your lineups for this weekend, so, waivers have already run. You're looking at your teams and you're deciding, man, who's going to give me those points this week? That's what the GOAT's here for. We're here to help you make those decisions. So, other than that, have a great day. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. Hit us up on Twitter at GOATFM Podcast, at Jim Neander. That's me, your host, Jim Neander. And we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.